Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast brought to you by the Draft Professors. Joined today with Marcus and Jake, and we're going to be discussing some wide receivers. We had a big day of football yesterday. Marcus, anything stand out about the college football that we saw yesterday?
That Ty Simpson, I think that he's on the. I would say he's on the. He's declining. His arrow's going down. I think it's been going down for a while. To be honest, and I don't know if he's going to come out. That if they how they view him at this point, because I think that he got later in the season and he played the bigger games. It just wasn't as impressive. And then then Mendoza basically just verified everything that he needed to verify yesterday. I would say from some other things though, like just noticing some other players. I thought like Surratt had probably one of his best games in a while. That you really haven't heard his name in a little bit, so I was going to talk about him a little bit today, and him and Omar Cooper, and then because I thought he stepped up a little bit when Cooper went down, it kind of allowed him to.
Yeah,
I think Cooper was slowly taking his spot that we all expected. So that was something that stood out to me.
Yeah, so Cooper moved up board. So from when Randall gave the scouting report on Cooper, which was, we'll call it 6 weeks ago, to when Randall did his big board on Cooper, which was last Tuesday, Cooper was probably the biggest riser from just doing the initial scouting report to seeing where he was on the board. I was surprised. Randall also had Surratt as wide receiver 5. So Randall really likes Surratt, and I would love to see Surratt in Buffalo round 1. But Jake, what stands out to you about the games from yesterday?
I think there's going to be a lot of discussion today when the final 12 are announced, which should be interesting to watch that type of meltdown on Twitter. But other than that, I think just getting to watch all of those prospects on Texas Tech just continue to dominate. Right, Romello Height, had a great game yesterday, and then next to Rodriguez, his running mate, what a day for him too. Like that whole front is going to be just so much fun to watch when they get to play. We assume they're probably getting a bye, right? So whoever they play in the second round, that's going to be really exciting to see. Like, how do these guys stack up when they play an SEC school or when they play potentially Oregon, something like that? That I think is what's going to be really exciting. And yeah, it does. To echo Marcus's sentiment on Simpson, it feels like once we talked about Simpson, ever since we talked about him extremely glowingly, we have started to kind of trickle off the cliff a little bit, which is unfortunate. But it does. I mean, I think for him, it seems to verify what we were kind of concerned about with the lack of starts, right? And so that lack of experience seemed to kind of rear its head a little bit down the stretch, which again may just kind of reinforce the fact of maybe he just needs to go next year, get through starts 27, 28 by the time he's done with next season. And I think a lot of people may feel like he has a better handle on the consistency of playing, the quarterback position. So
does Simpson have another year? Because I thought this was it for him.
He has to have. He sat for 2 at Bama? He sit for 2? Hang on. I've got it.
Yeah, Simpson's been there for a while, hasn't
he? He must, unless yeah, I guess this would be year 4, but I imagine he can go back for one more.
He can also return to school. According to the Sporting News, he could return to school. Okay. Yeah, so I had other draft professors convincing me this was it for Simpson. Okay. No, so he'll definitely, if he has another year, I think it's
at this point
almost a foregone conclusion he would go back.
Which wonder if that opens the door. Dante Moore feels like that he would, benefit from declaring now.
Yep.
Another guy who doesn't have that much, maybe others would still want to see some more starts out of him. But if both go back, it's going to be It's going to be quite the war up top to go get Mendoza.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Raiders fans get mad at me every time, but I laugh and say, like, Kate Klubnik, man, he just needs somebody who needs a quarterback, sees that arm, and he does a great Senior Bowl. Like, his pro day is we all know his pro day is gonna be awesome. He's gonna have a great pro day. That pro day, he's gonna be moving, running on the run, throwing 60 yards downfield on the run.
Klubnik's gonna be like, all right, he's gonna look through that Zach Wilson pro day and be like, oh, I'm gonna do all of this, and I think we're good. And his camp is gonna be like, yes, that's right, we are doing all of that, and we'll get you into round one, big guy.
So, Marcus, I love seeing your personality come out, and I have a question for you before we jump into the wide receivers. So my understanding is primarily before, like, I invited you to podcast with Draft Professors, most of your content was Raiders based, right?
Yes, most of it. Yeah, I did do a quarterback only podcast where we talked about NFL quarterbacks. I do like a list and I grade them. But
is the audience for that Raiders fans?
Yeah. No. That's kind of like everybody a little bit.
Okay. So my question is, how does it feel to like get out of like Raiders dogma and just like dive into the draft?
This year feels awesome. I'm gonna tell you that. This year has been bad. Like I do a lot of like charting and lot of detail with the Raiders that I like to do. So like, talk, somewhat intelligent about them. And it's a burden at this point. Like I feel like I do it because I have that podcast, or I don't know if I don't know what I'd be doing this Sunday. I might go do something, go hang out with my girls or something, take them somewhere instead of watching this game on Sunday. So, but but yeah, it's actually refreshing, to be honest. Like getting to watch these wide receivers early, getting to just watch some other content and not have to focus on the Raiders this year. It has been refreshing for sure. Big time.
Well, I want to say, like, just every podcast, like I can feel us like just learning and getting a feel for each other's personalities. I love seeing people come on the podcast, laugh, smile, have a good time, and being able to talk about college football, the draft, wide receivers. So I have a question, Marcus, out of the wide receivers that we, threw back and forth in the chat, who did you like the best, I think, out of the next five guys that you watched?
Chris Bell, definitely, is who I like the most. I thought there's just something to Bell. He just reminds me of A.J. Brown so much, every single thing that he does. So, like, it's just the way that he moves, kind of like A.J. Brown. He has almost the same size as A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown was 6 foot, barely 6'1", I think, 226 at the combine. Chris Bell's going to be right around there. And A.J. Brown isn't fast, like, naturally, but for some reason, when he gets the ball in his hands, he becomes a speed demon. And that's what Chris Bell's the same way. Like, Chris Bell's not fast. Like, I watch him, like, run a route. He'll run like a go route. He's not, like, running past people. But if I put the ball in his hands, he runs a 4.3. So that's my favorite thing about Chris Bell. And he just has a lot of upside where if he can get just a couple quirks, a couple tweaks to his route running, his releases, he could be a dominant number one. But I think some of the things that are there will probably maybe hold him back from maybe going round one. And just the way Louisville, I don't know what he's going to do in the offseason, but I think that he has that ability to become that number one in like maybe year 2 or year 3. And we're like, okay, so we missed on it, Chris Bell. That's kind of what he has to me. Just because like the hands are great. I think he does a good job finding the zones, and you can move him around. He's like a big Z, right? I mean, he's really not an X in my opinion. I think you can move him around a little bit, especially when you get him on those drags and those meshes. Like if you're running like a, with a lot of like what's happening right now, the 12 personnel, and then you get those 2-man routes when he's running that over route. Yeah, you get him the ball in his hands. Like there's. What can he do with it? I mean, as soon as he grabs that football, it's a different game. Like, and he's not really an elusive guy. Like he's like a juke people. But the play he had against Miami, where he took that, it was a couple plays against Miami. First of all, the first one where he caught the mesh and he just ran past the Miami guys, and I was like, how does that make any sense? It doesn't make any sense. Like, how did he beat that angle? And then then there's another play on there where he basically did the same thing. He caught the ball. There's like 4 guys around him, and he just ran through them basically and ran for 40 yards. So like he's just dynamic from that stance where if you get the ball in his hands in the right spot, there's no matter what he could do with it. But he's great with back shoulders. It's a great job tracking the ball in the air too as well, and he's tough in the catch point. There's a lot of things to like about Chris Bell. Is that, but I do believe he had the best 40 time. He's probably been in 4.5s probably overall, just because of the natural speed without the ball in his hand. I swear, if you gave him a football, he'd probably run a 4.3. But he has a 4.5 just without it, probably, right? And I think those things are going to push him down a little bit, just like they did for AJ Brown. So that's why I think he might be he could be in that first tier later on, but I think right now as a pure prospect, he's not really that close to Tate and those guys from like a pure prospect perspective, but the upside with him is so high for me.
So Jake, have you had a chance to get to Chris Bell?
I have. Yeah, I have.
So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the most exciting thing to watch is what happens when he gets on those curvilinear paths and he can accelerate through them, right? When he goes from running horizontal to get kind of vertical north-south, like that transition is insane. It is, reminiscent of insert, insane accelerator here at receiver, even at running back. Like you look at some of the running backs and how they, press the line and win the corner and do all that. Like he reminds you of guys who just make a living on doing exactly that. And I think the second touchdown against Miami, I think it was another one where it just feels like, okay, he has the feel, right, when he has kind of that zone coverage, the quarterback kind of leads him upfield a little bit, but he recognizes it. He makes that really little slight adjustment, north-south, and he gets himself moving really well at kind of almost as the ball arrives, which is, I think, really the hallmark of like, okay, if you're in a system where you want to really stress a ton of space, horizontally especially, like Bell is going to be a major factor for that for you. Where I think the down-to-down improvement lies, and I think it's really fun when you search guys on Twitter and just see what people say about them. And I feel like when you look at like Chris Bell, especially the 2 Miami touchdowns and then the Moss he had against SMU is all that gets showed. Yeah. And to me, that is like, okay, so then going into it, I'm like, all right, I want to see release footwork. I want to see, does he have a plan, against tighter coverage? Does he have a plan when he isn't running kind of drag routes or kind of just go balls down the field? And it feels like that plan gets a little spotty. Like he's doing all the stuff with like, okay, I got to square up, but he feels like he is like hyper focused on like, I need to get to this spot downfield, break, do all of that, and he doesn't, I don't think, do a great job of kind of setting himself up for success with how he approaches release footwork, stem work, all of that. And so it feels like when he lacks that like sense of suddenness and patience and vary the pace up at the line of scrimmage, he kind of struggles there. He likes to kind of get into the route, get to the spot without kind of moving defensive backs or keeping them off balance. And so it makes it easier for these guys to stay in the hip pocket, right? Be involved at the catch point a little more when it's kind of man coverage, because he isn't doing a lot of, okay, if I have an in-breaker here, if I'm running kind of a glance or a post, I'm not leaning into the guy, right, in the opposite direction to kind of spring myself out of it. I'm not, feeling like I'm not giving the corner any indication of like, okay, I'm pressing this back vertical. I'm getting into this. I'm treating this vertical. It's like, no, I know I need to get to this spot, so I'm just going to take the shortest path to that spot. And that is, if he which he kind of does, when he consistently does that, it's just not giving me a lot of confidence to be like, all right, I can trust you with this route and this route and this route. It's like, okay, we're going to have to build to that. Kind of like Marcus said, of like year 2, year 3, where it's like, okay, now it's everything might click. It seems like kind of what the Chargers are doing with Trey Harris, which might work out really nicely for them in a year or two, right? Where it felt like, okay, this guy's got a lot of speed. He's a long strider. He can win down the field, do all that. Let's bring him along slowly. Especially for him, I think, last year Trey Harris was like, okay, zone coverage. Does he have the feel of where to sit down? What spots? When I get this coverage, where do I need to be? I feel like Bell's kind of in that scenario too a little bit, where it's like, if you're asking him to run by guys or, pull away from guys on crossers, he's going to do that. But when it comes to like becoming an X or even maybe a Z a little bit, where it's like, I still want you running, these type of routes and stuff, it feels like all of that part of the receiver position is still kind of a ramp-up process, development process for him at this point, and it feels like we have a little bit longer of a track. So I think he's exciting, but I think that's why you might see someone like Bell drop into the 50s, 60s in the draft, somewhere around there, where it's like, okay, we can't draft you to be our one this second. We have to have somebody established who can do all of the, run the in-breaking, out-breaking stuff, right? Be in rhythm in the offense and let you come in, we ramp up your snaps year one, consistently throughout the season to get you these routes that we know you're going to be successful on early, but then still have a plan of like, okay, can we get all of the pace variation and the release footwork and all the stem work? Can we get that to the point where it needs to be for like year two, late year two, something like that? That feels like where we're at with a guy like Chris Bell.
I like how you two just covered Chris Bell because we've talked about him numerous times, but I think the two of you kind of quantified where his game maybe has a gap to the NFL or the transition isn't, because there were some people that when we covered him, they were, let's say, a little bit south on him. And now I'm beginning to understand why. It's more of he just needs a year, right, to polish up some things. But nobody's quantified it the way the two of you did. So, Jake, out of the wide receivers that you've watched, is Bell in your top 10?
I think
it's close.
It's close. It's around that. I think he can. I think he's around that 9 to 12. Because I kind of put a little more cap on these guys because they're now in season, some of this stuff. So yeah, he's probably in that 9 to 12 range right now, where it feels like he has probably the highest ceiling of anybody in and around his tier. But he's just not like we've talked about this a couple weeks ago with guys like Tate and Tyson, who do a great job of, okay, I'm off the line of scrimmage, right? Now I need to get back vertical, and then I'm breaking. Where it's like Bell is kind of like, okay, I got off the line of scrimmage. Where am I going? I'm going right there. And so like that level of like advanced receiver play is kind of what separates him at this point. So yeah, he's kind of hovering around the top 10, where it feels like there are guys who I think have a better handle on those ins and outs and the technicality of playing the receiver position right now. Whereas if Bell gets there, his ceiling is a lot higher athletically, right, than maybe a couple of the others that we kind of had on our list. But it's just, okay, how can we get him to build on what he has right now of like these outrageously good physical tools and the explosiveness for sure, like and how that translates to going to get the football and winning after the catch. How can we get that, honed into playing with that level of control at high speeds? Can we get to that point? Can we add the technicality and the technique standpoint of all of this to refine this, and then he can still play at speeds like that? That's what I think is going to be really fascinating. Because does he have to declare?
That's a good question.
I want to double check because, like, certainly, it looks like So it looks like this is year 4 for him.
Yeah.
So,
Syracuse transfer.
Oh.
According to the search I did, it says he has 1 year.
Okay.
Oh, wait a second. There is a Chris Bell that plays basketball. Make sure you're looking at the Chris Bell
Okay.
football.
I was like, where did you play at Syracuse? I was
No,
like,
I didn't see Syracuse.
That
out there.
really
I'm like, oh my
just
gosh.
happened.
Okay.
Wow.
yeah. He says 4 years. So yeah, he can come out this year. He's like 4 years. I don't know. if he's a redshirt junior, because he didn't play that much as his freshman.
Looks
But
like
yeah,
he played in a decent amount of games
yeah.
to potentially not redshirt. Yeah, so I mean, this is, I think, just a really good, like, if he does declare, this is, you got a lot of guys in the room. You feel comfortable with I hate to give this team, really exciting players, but like Philly, right? Like, Philly, they need a third receiver. You want to develop a third receiver. This would probably be somebody I'd be interested in developing, right? You give him a lot of the free access stuff as a slot guy when you're in 11, and he gets to watch the master craftsman, this Devontae Smith, and then watch the guy who's kind of in his weight class, frame class, like all of that. Like, watch the control I play with. Right, you have two awesome mentors of how to play the receiver position in that room. Like that's to me is like a perfect spot for. All right, let's learn both part. Let's learn the two parts that these two guys have down pat at the receiver position, and see if we can get you to that level.
So Marcus, is Chris Bell in your top 10 of who you've watched so far?
Yeah, he is. He is in my top 10 of who I watched so far.
And
I haven't done as much as Jake. I know I haven't watched as much as Jake to kind of have that serious top 10. But who I've watched so far, like since we've been talking, he would be in my top 10 of those guys. But I don't know. I haven't got to like Denzel Boston and the guys like that kind of would start knocking him down a little bit. So, so that's kind of where I'm at with that. But like I wouldn't. I don't know. I think he might end up in my top 10 overall, anyways, because I like his upside so much. That if he hits his upside, like he could be a number one wide receiver. So that's kind of my thing. I don't know, like, is he he's not as pro ready as maybe some people think he is and they watch him, because I think he's got to work on some of those releases and things like that. But those things can be fixed. I think he can get better at those things and just learn how to use his size a little bit more and learn how to win. But there's just a lot of dynamic plays to him. And because even, my comparison to AJ Brown, because even if you watch AJ Brown throughout his career, like he didn't start off just, the big plays were there, but he wasn't just 1,300 yard guy like right away. That came later on, right? Over time. And he was more of a compliment to, I don't know if it was somebody else with the Titans, but he was a compliment for somebody. And then he just kind of grew into that. And now he's at a big time number one guy. And I think that's kind of where Chris Bell is at, where he might have to come and be a compliment, right? Make some big plays for you, and then eventually grow into number one and see what happens there. But he reminds me of AJ Brown too, because I could tell when Chris Bell is mad that he's not getting the ball. So the mannerisms I can watch it. He's like every route he runs the route like he's number one guy. Like he's always looking for the ball. It's like he doesn't understand why he's not throwing to him.
So polarizing receiver, and I don't know that he was on the list that I sent, but the other guy at Louisville is Colin Lacey. Okay. So he's the receiver on the other side of the field. When you evaluate Colin Lacey, make sure you check his special teams. Okay. So he's probably going to be like a round 7 guy. He's going to give you special teams return ability, but as a receiver, he's not there yet. But like if an NFL team needs a wide receiver 5 to return kicks, Colin Lacey has some decent tape. At minimum, he would be a priority free agent, but he's probably going to be drafted later. But he's the other receiver at Louisville.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Jake, out of the next set of receivers that you watched, who did you like the best?
In terms of who I liked the best, I think to take it just maybe a little bit slightly different direction, the most intriguing to me is probably Chris Brazzell from Tennessee, just because going in, I'm like, all right, these Tennessee guys, we know what this is like. This, the splits are insanely wide. Like, let's, is it real offense? And it's weird to watch an offense where on half the plays, kind of the receivers are jogging off the line of scrimmage because they're not, like they're not involved in the play. I still don't like that. I would love to see them like always running and doing something. But Brazel is, obviously like PFF has him listed 6'5", 200. I imagine he's not quite that tall, but he is big. And I think he has a chance to break that sort of like stigma of Tennessee receivers because of what he can do. And he, they have a lot of space. Teams are concerned about the speed. I mean, he had I think like 6 for 170 something and 3 against Georgia, right? Yeah, 6 for 177 and 3. That's outrageous stuff. And I think like that game is really the game where you saw Georgia kind of creep up a little bit and go, okay, we're gonna play like we're not gonna jam him necessarily, but we're gonna play kind of this softer like press coverage. We're gonna be up in his face after a yard and a half. And there are a couple plays in that game where it's just like, okay, he dusted him. And one of them was him really nice split release, enough, I think enough of a jab step where just get the corner off balance a little bit, stem to the inside, throw by technique, sink, the hips and then go extend for the ball on an out route. Just a really, really good rep from him. And then he wins downfield, high pointing the football, tracking it, staying balanced through some late contact on some of those throws as well. And then the catch radius is outstanding. He's making, he's slowing up, making plays behind him. He's, as I said, elevating for the ball. So the ball skills are really, really good. He's a reliable hands catcher too. You don't see a lot of, catch with the body, wrong angle of attack, right? He's not when the ball's up high, he's not underhanding attack, anything like that. Like he's going up strong with the right, technique to attack the ball. Downfield throws obviously have been a big part of his game as well, and he does a nice job. He kind of run the bang 8 posts for one of his touchdowns against Georgia. Does a really nice job stemming towards the leverage and then kind of creating the alleyway for him to score. And downfield he did a great job separating. I think I don't remember if maybe it was the Georgia game as well, but just a really nice job getting off of contact late and finding the football. So there is really a lot to like, I think, with Brazel, and you see him run some outbreakers, and you go, okay, like he can sink the hips at times. I don't think he's always super comfortable doing that. Like you see him run some 7 stops, and he feels like he can sink the hips a little bit, but obviously teams are terrified, and rightfully so, of him to run by them. And that's something that I think he probably can use to his advantage a little bit more. I think I do think there are plenty of times where the body language is really good, and he is selling that, no, I'm running right by you. And, the hip sink is, as I said, is there at times, and he's able to get out of those breaks a little bit on the vertical plane. And yeah, it feels like he has, I think, a little bit more in terms of the route tree than some of these guys at this point. I think him and Bell are really good guys to compare because I think both are kind of these explosive guys down the field who can make plays at the catch point. But I do think Brazel has a little bit more right now in terms of how to attack leverage, how to handle, kind of more tight quarters coverage, right? Like, you're going to get contacted early in the stem. Do you have a plan for that? And I think he does. And yeah, just hip sync through the break. He feels like a little more compact and a little more efficient right now. So I do really like what I see from Brazel. It is, though, frustrating because, like, I think I watched like 4 or 5 games, I think, of his, and I feel like I saw like maybe 4 reps where guys are up near the line of scrimmage on him because I think they're concerned about, okay, if Tennessee, they're going to run switch releases, right? We can't be up near the line of scrimmage. We have to cover a lot of space. So that's the one thing. That's what makes it difficult. It's like, okay, the offense is it's super hard to evaluate him within that offense. And it would be really nice if he was just got an offense where the splits were not as wide and, you have a feel of like, okay, they're getting him. And they did it a few times where he's close to the line of scrimmage, like closer to the line of scrimmage in a bunch look. And, he's got to, time up the release and everything with everybody around him. But it feels like there are a lot of reps where it's just kind of like, okay, he is so far away from the ball and he is so near the sideline that it's like, okay, you're not gonna get this. But I do think there are still elements when he plays. You go, okay, like this can translate. So I was pretty impressed with what I saw, kind of on a down-to-down basis when they are asking him to run routes and not just kind of jog off the line of scrimmage because they're handing the ball off because the numbers are favorable, right?
Okay, so there's no guarantee that Marcus and Jake watch the same receivers. Marcus, did you watch Brazel?
I did not watch Brazel.
Okay.
I kind of want to now, though.
He's
talking about.
So, well, I did mock him to the Raiders in round 2 of a mock I posted.
I don't know if the Raiders fans would take us another 6'5", 200-pound wide receiver from Tennessee.
I post 32 mocks, over the course of a day. That one got comments that I blew the round 2 pick. From a Raiders fan that follows the page. So Marcus, who's the next wide receiver that you watch that you think deserves a shout out?
I don't know if he deserves a shout out, but I just want to talk about him a little bit because I kind of want to see what Jake's thoughts are on him. Is Malachi Fields. Now, Malachi Fields was super interesting to me just to watch because he is, I'm looking at it, I had to look this up before we talked about it, 6'4", 222 pounds. He's fluid as hell at that big. He's very fluid. Like his routes, he runs a great dig route, and he has a great release. He has the size, and when he's on, he makes like crazy contested catches and things like that. And there's a lot to like about his game, but it was just I felt like something was missing, and I don't know what it was. Like it, especially like against Texas A&M, like it felt like when it was time for him to make a big catch, he would drop it. If it was in traffic against somebody that like was maybe just a more skilled corner, he just didn't have that. I don't know. He's missing that that dog in him. It sounds not very scouty, but it feels like he's missing. Like I felt like he should be better when I was watching him. Like I felt like he should be more dominant, which is how fluid he is. Like you don't see guys at 6'4", 222 pounds that could bend and run routes like he does. Like he has a great rocker step. He has a great release. He gets square. He can, kind of forces a lot of corners open the gate earlier than they want to, and he can runs a great route. I mean, the dig routes are which is huge in the NFL. He had this one route against USC, and he didn't have a good game against USC. He only had I think he had 3 targets or something like that, 1 catch. But he ran his route against USC when I was watching that game where they had inside leverage, and he gave a little rocker step, and he got inside the corner on that dig route. He would have been open, right? And it's things like that. I'm like, that feels like a guy who should be higher, but like it's just something isn't there where it's like he's like dropping passes when he shouldn't, or he's just like not like using his size to dominate smaller corners. And like you're that big, you run routes like that, I feel like you should just be more dominant. Like, and I know also Notre Dame doesn't pass much because they don't have to, because they have those 2 running backs they got. I mean, I watching Fields Jeremiah Love is very distracting. I'll tell you that. He's very distracting. Very distracting. And so there's a lot of that ties into it. But I don't know. It's just weird. And I mean, looking at it, he doesn't even have any drops or anything like that, really. But like against Texas A&M, like I feel like a couple of those plays were plays where I expected a 6'4", 222-pound guy not to let a 5'10" corner get over his back and maybe have it knock the ball down. You know what I mean? Like it's like I just felt like there should be more dominance with him. That's just missing. And one of my co-hosts on my show, I asked him about Malachi Fields. He said he's a 5th round pick, and I was like, that's weird. And then I watched him. I could see as a fan, he's a fan of Notre Dame. So as a fan of Notre Dame, I can see why he might feel a little different than I do watching him on film. Just because when it's that moment, you need him to make that catch. Does he make it, or is he kind of just fold? It's weird. And so like it felt like he had the ability to be a number 1 and he should be a higher guy just because the way he runs routes and the catches that he makes, he's got the one-handed crazy catches, he's adjusting the ball. He does all these crazy stuff, but it just felt like something was missing. And so I was interested. That's why I want to talk about him a little bit.
So Marcus, did you think Malachi Fields of Notre Dame was one of the best blocking wide receivers that you've seen?
Yeah, oh yeah, him and Chris Bell. Honestly, that's probably
Yeah.
one of my favorite things about Chris Bell. Chris Bell
Well,
blocks like he is a tight end, and he likes it. That's
yeah,
what,
I would tell your co-host that the reason that Fields doesn't get out of day 2 is because he's a really good blocker. We've been covering Fields since the summer. He was actually the second best wide receiver in Notre Dame.
Mhm.
Greathouse has been hurt all year.
Yeah.
But Jake, what did you think of Malachi Fields?
Yeah, I haven't done the deep dive, but I have seen, I think, kind of a couple games of him in passing where it's, yeah, he can make these like otherworldly plays. I think the Pitt game, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
right, was one where he made like 2 outstanding plays where it's just like, I think one was like a one-handed catch, right, where he's kind of like jumping over it, almost over and on a corner. I definitely remember the other one where the touchdown, I think it was, where he kind of, it just looked so easy contorting and like making, it being flexible and being, really, I think, in control in the air. And, you watch that and you go, okay, he only caught 10 of 21 contested balls. That's this year. That's wild. Why isn't he doing like this to, and these are Pitt corners, by the way. I feel like Pitt corners are usually like, maybe they're not drafted super high, but they seem to be ready-made for the league because they play so much man coverage, and they stick around for a long time, right?
Yeah.
No matter if they're not like, they may not be the super high-end starters per se, but they stick around in the league because they're battle-tested and ready. And if he's doing that to the Pitt corners, I'm kind of, okay, so we're catching 10 of 21 contested balls, like, and these are probably like, at the very least, they're going to be among the best that you play all year.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe you could haggle and go, yeah, Miami, Texas A&M, they're bringing in, big-time guys. But you would think, okay, like, you should be doing this to everybody. And it's like, okay, Texas A&M, you only caught 2 of 5 contested passes. And it just feels like, yeah, there is something to, though, him and Bell, as kind of mentioned, of like, you're seeing these teams that want to present, run favorable looks out of 11 that are probably going to be like, okay, we have, Bell's explosiveness that we can use if he blocks as an insert player out of play action. That's a nightmare. Good luck running with him when he's faking on the insert block.
Yeah.
And then you have, someone like Fields, who's almost got the, maybe not quite the build, but like the, Gesicki, Darren Waller, like, I just go up and be this massive receiver if he continues to get, be more consistent at the catch point. Oh, and I can block as well. Like, you're living in that world that, teams would love to be in, where it's, what are we going to run out of this? Bet you're not going to know, right?
Yeah.
So, I haven't done the full deep dive, but he is somebody who seems a lot more fluid in passing than he kind of should be at that size, which is kind of like, okay, can we do the Gesicki thing of like, this is a big slot who can move like this, and you're not necessarily, if you don't feel comfortable, but Marcus, you said he runs the dig route really well, which is what I'm excited to find out, when I do kind of a full dive. But if he can be, you're not putting pressure on him, it seems, in year one, where kind of Buffalo may have just, wanted Coleman to do a lot of that stuff in year one, where it's like, I don't know if you want to give him X receiver duties right away.
Yeah.
And same with Quentin Johnston, who the Chargers 100% forced that in year one, which I'm not sure why they did that. But you get a guy like, Fields, who, maybe this comp isn't because he's Notre Dame, but like Claypool also had that, they forced him outside, and maybe you work him in, and we'll see. I technique wise, maybe he's better than I think, but if there's any level of concern, you go, okay, if there's room for that big slot type, like we can do that. And I don't think teams should necessarily be afraid of that, especially if they're drafting guys on day 2, where it doesn't have to be, you don't have to necessarily. I get it. We watch guys like Lab Akonki come in and dominate, as a year 1 guy, and you go, oh, well, that's what all the day 2 receivers should do. I was like, McConkey went behind some, went after guys he should have gone after. And there were a lot of guys who were picked ahead of him.
He also had some injuries going into that draft that people don't talk about anymore.
He did, but also like he was just a lot better at like playing receiver than those guys who went in front of him. And so I think they kind of expect that, right? Where you kind of you watch like Devontae Adams, great example. it took 3.5 years
Yeah.
and he was a round 2 pick. It took 3.5 years, and then
Oh, I'll
goodbye.
give you
Like
another. Alec Pierce.
Pierce is doing a great job.
I loved Alec Pierce when he came out.
Me too.
This is year 4, and now everybody's starting to talk about it. Like they were able to trade. They were able to trade.
Adonai Mitchell.
Jets.
Yeah.
A.D. Mitchell, because Pierce has emerged, but it took him 4 years. Right? I mean, I've had Alec Pierce stashed in my fantasy team for 4 years.
I mean, yeah, that's it. It's a fantastic example as well. Like Nico Collins he was a round 3 pick. He is not Nico Collins now, and he was in even year 2. It was like, okay, let's be patient with this extremely athletic player, because you get the lads, and the St. Brown emerged late in his rookie year, and you go, oh, he was a round 4 pick. These round 4 picks should be doing that. And it's like, no. Some of these superstars, it took them a little bit longer. And that's, I think, the trickiest part about this is, when you rank these receivers, it's kind of like, okay, yes, you have your immediate impact. He's got all the tools. And then it's like, okay, is there a tier that we should make for these guys who can reach the ceilings, like a Nico, like a Pierce, like a Devontae, where it's like, okay, they can get to this, but it's going to take some time. And we talked about Bell already. It's kind of like a really, really good example. Maybe Trey Harris does that for the Chargers in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Perhaps he is that guy. We'll see. But like there are going to be those types in every draft where it's, okay, here we go. Like year 3, you're starting to see it. Year 4, you're starting to see it. So
yeah.
That's
Marcus, Malachi Fields, Keon Coleman. Who did you think was the better prospect?
Oh, I'll go Fields, just because I think Fields can run every route. That's the thing. I really do. I feel like he is. It's that's why he's so confusing to me, because like he runs routes at 6'4", 22. Like it's not really normal how he runs routes there. So it's like, why aren't you a top 10 pick? And that's kind of my problem.
Got it. Okay.
But you could tell, like, I would not take him in the top 10, but like he should, because like his size and the way he runs routes, but I wouldn't do it.
And
right. And that's my thing with him. So.
I said this about Keon Coleman when he was drafted. I'll say it about Bell and Fields. A big receiver is always big, right? So the skill set ages well. Yeah. A fast receiver, once they become slow, may not be effective anymore. Right? Like if a fast receiver loses a step and they don't have anything else to their game, they're just a guy. Whereas a big receiver can be a mismatch, because if they lose a step, you may not know, because the big receiver's game is a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But
that's
Jake,
very true.
Out of the next group of receivers that you watched, who else did you want to give like a shout out to that you liked?
I think it's only appropriate you bring up Surratt after last night, and just I think a nod to Randall as a draft professor, of like having him very high in the rankings. I think it's important we talk about him. Mm-hmm. Surratt's interesting because I feel like he doesn't fall under the two kind of categories that Jim just brought up, of like he's the super big receiver will stay big, and it's extremely hard to combat that if he has, kind of the tools to play above the air, or play above the rim, and in the air, and, really bully corners. Trying to bring up Surratt's stats really quick while we do this, but Surratt's kind of in the realm of like, okay, you see the precision and the variance of pace and setting up other releases at the line of scrimmage, like a guy like Devontae, like a guy, who is in a one-on-one basketball game, and you're kind of like in a position of like, I can't take away the left because he can go any direction, and I have to be prepared for that. Surratt has that level of precision, suddenness at the line of scrimmage to where, and the varied releases where you can't be certain where he's going. He can throw up the shuffle release and do a great job attacking that outside hip with the shuffle release, and it's gone. And he can gain ground with the hop step and And once he lands, he's gone. And so that helps him win a lot of the slant routes, the outbreakers, all of that, and be in those quick windows in the quick passing game effectively. You watch Illinois, you watch Iowa, you watch Oregon. I think the three teams, other than obviously haven't seen last night's in total of like seeing everything, right? The all 22 of last night against Ohio State. But those three, I think, are the teams that you would say, okay, those are the top three that you would want to see Surratt, at least from this year, right? You can obviously go to last year as well. And he obviously dominated, right? He scored 4 times. He had, upwards of like 360 yards against those three guys. And it was very evident that he's just a guy who finds a way to get open in the quick game, can find a way to get open in intermediate, and just has a really strong plan of attack. Even with the release combined with, being able to swat the inside hand, the jam hand of the corner, the ability to handle contact in the stem with no problem. He's always fighting for good position there. Now, I think the thing with and obviously in tight spots in a contested window, can he find just that little bit extra space to make sure he brings down the football? Often he will do that. And he can still make big plays down the field when he's given the runway. He's not explosive. He's not going to be like this overwhelmingly physically explosive player, but he plays with so much control, suddenness, and it's very hard to basically, as I said, the basketball player, it's very hard to guard him because the crossover, if he goes right to that crossover, it's tough to handle. But then he builds off of it so nicely that you just aren't sure where he's going, and he's built all of that into the timing of the play on top of it. That is extremely dangerous stuff. If he is I have to imagine he has watched a little bit of Davante Adams and what Davante does at the line of scrimmage. I feel like he has had to have watched him because it just looks like that at times. And the corners just don't. They're if they don't get that early jam and they kind of do that sort of soft press look where you're still in phase, you're still square, you're kind of almost just kind of trying to match him off the line of scrimmage, he's going to dust you. You got to get hands on because he knows exactly how to attack, where to attack, what to do to get you to commit early. And I think the question is he going to have enough, does he have enough bursts in and out of breaks to pull away at least a little bit on some of the intermediate stuff? That's maybe my biggest concern with him. But in terms of, finding that, like the Keenan Allen crossover, the Davante Adams hop step, all of that, like he has that down to a T. So I can understand why he is ranked a lot higher. To me, I think the biggest question is, are you going to, the intermediates, the comebacks, the outs, the in breakers that are further down the field, those deep digs, do you have enough in your bag to compensate for what I think is kind of a lack of being able to hit gears out of those breaks that's going to let you pull away? Are you able to swipe? Are you able to get, the corners off balance? Can you lean into them? Can you be physical like that to give yourself just an inch more? Because there will be quarterbacks who will still thread the needle on throws like that because they trust you at the catch point to make a lot of plays, right? The Herberts, the Daks, the Staffords, like all of those guys can do that. But if there are guys who would, want to see a little bit more from you in that area, like how can you combat the lack of explosiveness you have to give yourself more of those opportunities? I think that's maybe the question that maybe could limit him in terms of what he's going to run. But again, another guy, if you're giving him the two-way go in the slot, have fun. Yeah. Have a good time. Have a good time in there. I don't like your chances unless you've got DeJean level playmaking ability or you're big like Hamilton. You could guard guys there. Like you're slot corner 16, 17, 18 in the league, no chance. It's not happening. You're just not going to have a good time.
So, Jake, Elijah Surratt, Emeka Egbuka, who did you have as the better prospect?
To me, Egbuka, I have a tier higher just because I think Egbuka played. I think Egbuka played at that different gear. He played extremely efficient in the route break transition. Not that Surratt isn't, but I think Egbuka did a good job maintaining higher level of speed through the break with extremely good footwork, whereas Surratt's got the good footwork, but he doesn't quite have necessarily the gear Egbuka does. And I know you asked, I think, last week of like how much does explosiveness go into your evaluation. It's up there. It's not like at the level of the route running, right? But explosiveness to me is again not necessarily as you mentioned. It's not being like, oh, I can run 4.2. I can just run my
Yeah.
guys. It's more of like, can you play with different gears and get to them at different times when you need to? It feels like Ibuka can do that, and I feel like Ibuka was just maybe at this point a little more advanced of in terms of the spatial awareness, the coverage awareness, and then a little bit maybe more in terms of adjusting and finding windows for himself at the catch point than Surratt. But Surratt is in, I think, firmly in like the round 2, early or late. You could kind of maybe sell me on either of like, this is going to be kind of a rock solid contributor year 1. But I do feel like Ibuka's level of control and it just advanced, technique and gear control and all of that, I think separates him a little bit.
Okay. Mark, was Elijah Surratt of Indiana one of the receivers you had a chance to get to?
Yeah. I mean, I watched Surratt a little bit earlier this year too, just when I was watching Mendoza, and just like Jake was saying, he feels like a huge red zone guy because he is tough to guard in those tight spaces, and you kind of saw that last night. That's why he has 12 touchdowns this year is because of what he can bring to you in the red zone, because he can beat those press coverages and things like that. And he has some really good route running ability, but that explosiveness from like the 20 to 20, I mean, you're not going to see him kind of just dominate from there. So it's going to be all possession type of stuff. But, the way he runs the out route, that's one thing that really stuck out to me. And him and Mendoza are really on point with anticipation and how they want to run routes. You can tell him and Mendoza work together a lot. Like they have a lot of chemistry. And that's a big thing, especially with that quarterback just coming in. That tells me a lot about him too, that he has a chemistry with the quarterback that quick. And I think that's like in those condensed spaces where it's just, he has to get that 10-yard out, or he has to get that 10-yard slant, or he has to get that, the 10-yard in route, or, the intermediate areas. He can eat there. He's gonna keep finding ways to get open. He's very savvy. I think there's a lot of like little tiny nuances he does, like attacking an outside shoulder, and then getting a corner to give up his leverage a little bit, and then or even when he's running out route, he might attack the inside shoulder, get that guy to open up, and then he's back outside. It's a lot of nuance and savviness to the intermediate route game that he has. But that's why I feel like he is a red zone type of guy. Like if you bring him into a team and he doesn't maybe not contribute early, he might contribute with just like 6 touchdowns year 1 with like 30 or 40 catches, because he can win in those areas. And when you have a guy like that, that's why I like the Davante Adams comp, because when Davante Adams was struggling early in his career, he had like 12 touchdowns. So
Yeah. True.
He was still eating in the red zone, and that continued, and that's why he has like 120 career touchdowns, and not the yards and the catches as much, right? Is because that early on in his career he could still win in those condensed areas. Yeah. And I think that's a big thing that for Surratt is like if he can win in those areas, that can all add up as you get better in the NFL, and then you might become that 9-catch, 120 yards, 2 touchdown guy. So yeah, I think he can become a number 1 that way, especially with the quarterback that he gets some chemistry with, and the back shoulders and the fades. Like I said, understanding when to change the play to a slant and things like that. That's where he's going to really thrive early on in the NFL as a red zone, because just like Jake was saying, he's just so good in those intermediate to short areas.
He has the basketball slasher.
Yeah,
like he is that guy.
Mm-hmm.
If you're gonna say my receiver room is a basketball team, which I know a lot of people bring that up when they bring up receiver rooms, that's my slasher. Get in the paint, cross people over, do all that stuff, get some of those like quote unquote possession buckets, right?
Mm-hmm.
That feels like a really good place for him early on. And I guess Marcus, the out routes, the quick outs especially really good. The bigger, longer developing ones are maybe a little bit more of a question mark, but he does hand fight really well. And it's just going to be for those like late state, like Keenan Allen, Devontae types. Can he continue to use all of that like advanced technique that he has to generate those wins at level 2 of the defense? I think is going to be like, if he does that, like we might have a serious problem on our hands
Yeah.
if we're a defensive coordinator. So, and I think really cool to see him like St. Francis is where he played in 22.
Yeah, I
So
saw
from
that.
St. Francis to James Madison, and then obviously come over with Signetti from James Madison to Indiana, and 20 touchdowns in 2 seasons. That's, I mean, we're hitting pay dirt.
Yeah, he got
doing a lot
41
of the
through his
right
whole career. So I mean,
Yeah, and he
he's a
is
touchdown machine.
over 2.5 yards per route run every season. As we're moving up, so that's really good to see as well. Just on a per route basis, where we got that efficiency as well. It's a really good number to hit.
So why don't we pause? We've gotten through, I think, 4 or 5 wide receivers. Why don't we pause for podcaster identification? Marcus, do you want to let everybody know about Tape Don't Lie and the Raiders content?
So yeah, I do Raiders content at this point. It's a little embarrassing at this point, but I'm struggling with it. But yeah, Raiders content, Tape Don't Lie. We're getting into the draft season. I just didn't think it was gonna be this bad this year. That's all. But yeah. So I do Raiders content. You deep dive into Raiders all the time. So if you're a Raiders fan, all day, all Raiders over there. We're getting more and more into draft season though. I had a draft episode drop this past week, just yesterday with Caleb Downs and Chris Bell. My co-host Matt Holder, he does a lot of work for Bleacher Report. So definitely we're big draft guys. So follow us there. Draft season starting up. We're gonna be at the Senior Bowl and things like that and covering that. So look out for that. And then and then also check me out on this show as well every Sunday. And follow me on Twitter at the Mark John NFL.
Marcus, thank you so much for being here. I love hearing your takes every Sunday morning.
Thanks, man.
So, Jake, you want to let everybody know about your draft coverage and the Packers things that you do?
Yeah, so at Jake NFL Draft on Twitter will be a great place to find all those links, Substack links, where we do a lot of receiver stuff like this. And then, Jake NFL Draft on YouTube, that link is there. That stuff is beginning as, some guys who are going to declare. Pretty much that's where we're going to probably start with some of those guys. I imagine Tyson and Lemon, you'll see them. If you're searching on YouTube, you might see them come to a screen near you. So those will be good to watch. And then doing some Packer stuff as well. That YouTube channel is there with my main one that you can find on that homepage. So a lot of work there, and we're gearing up. We're approaching mid-December. You're gonna see kind of. We've seen the Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl announcements, American Bowl, all those are coming. So we are almost pretty much in full speed towards draft season, which is really exciting. And to echo Marcus, this is being here Sundays. This is a lot of fun.
It is
a lot of fun.
Oh, it is. It's turning out really well, and we get a lot of engagement. So first of all, no, I'm just gonna say no.
Be wild.
Okay.
It's true.
But this one I got to take. So this channel has covered every player that's expected to be drafted in rounds 1 through 5. Saying that no one has covered them, I'm going to take this one. And you threw me a softball. I'm knocking it out of the park. There's a wide receiver YouTube playlist. Go listen to the playlist. Randall and Andy broke down 64 wide receivers.
Good look.
Okay. 8 wide receivers per podcast for 8 straight weeks. So they covered approximately 30 receivers that will not be drafted and 37 that they have draftable grades on. So we've covered them. Go to the playlist. And then let me know what you think. Then, that doesn't mean that there's draftable grades on the Texas Tech wide receivers, but I know that we covered them.
That's fun.
Nice.
So, so Bryce Lance, this is going to definitely be a good day 3 wide receiver. Anthony Russo, a draft professor, has been on the Bryce Lance bandwagon since May.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good one to get eyes on.
Is that Packer fan commenting that? I think so.
Say that again?
Looks like a Packer fan commenting that. just wants the NDSU to Green Bay pipeline going on here at receiver, it looks like. So, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Christian Watson and stuff.
Yeah, Watson and then Lance. Okay.
Okay. But I just want to give a shout out right now to all of the podcasters at Draft Professor. We have just covered the draft class from like the second week of October to now. Every podcast is just breaking down different players. So there's about 27 podcasters that were basically covering 8 players a show, breaking down the entire draft class. And for example, like this episode with Jake and Marcus gets put on the wide receiver channel. The quarterback shows that you guys did a few weeks ago get put on the quarterback channel. So if you go to the YouTube playlist, you will get multiple opinions on the same player. So the Draft Professor is not about one big board. The simulator is interactive. So whichever players you mock draft, those are the players that move up the board, right? So the board matters less to the simulator algorithm. But from a podcast standpoint, I want as many opinions on this channel as people are willing to podcast. If I like people's opinions, they get invited back a lot more. I think it's the right way to put it. But for Marcus, Jake, myself, for the 110 people at the Draft Professor, thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Enjoy your football Sunday, and we'll see you on a podcast again tomorrow. Thank you, everybody.